Good morning. Today is the 29th of Cheshvan, the 13th of November, Erev Rosh Chodesh Kislev.
Not always. Only 29, not a 30.
Sometimes it's 29, sometimes it's 30. This year is only 29.
And next month is also 29.
Okay, so it's a chaser, and 13 months. That's good. Okay. So we were up to U'ma Shenimtza. Yeah, 188. ומה שנמצא כוח השכל ביד, במלאכת האומנות כמו בציור וכדומה. Now he wants to understand, we're talking about the general will that encompasses everything. Take mine.
Well, I can't find the page on the page.
ומה שנמצא. Here. ומה שנמצא כוח השכל ביד, במלאכת האומנות. So we were talking about the general will that encompasses, it's an encompassing light, it's an or makif. And because it's an or makif, encompasses everything equally, so it's in everything equally. And so that is not exactly, we said yesterday, it's not exactly what we mean by the nervous system. It's something else. The nervous system is already or memale. It's already a type of light, or pnimi, that fills the vessels that it's within, and that's why it's different from organ to organ in the body. And I want to say, we said yesterday that because of that, there's differentiation between the light in each organ. When we're talking about pnimi, when we talk about light that's integrated, so it's integrated differently. So you can't have one type of light or one type of divine revelation in the hand and in the mind at the same time. They have to be differentiated. They have to be different. Like we know that whatever is in the hand is completely different. And I'll say it like this. Yesterday I don't know why I had such a big problem explaining it, but Ol Makif in the general will is what we call that the person is here. He's even here as a single unit. That's the Makif that holds everything together. In any case, now we're talking about what integrates into the organs. So now he says, but we see that there's like a intellect, a type of intellect in the hand. For instance, somebody who was a real artist in something, who was a real craftsman. So you see that their hands do things. It looks like the hand knows by itself. Right? I was watching yesterday this.
It's called in English golden hands.
Okay, golden hands, whatever you can. So it looks like the hand knows something. כמו בציור, like if he's a painter. וכדומה שנקרא אומן, he's known as an artisan. לצייר ולעשות כל דבר שמשכיל בשכלו. So, what is that? האחד, הרי הוא רק עשייה שבשכל, שהוא המדרגה היותר אחרונה שבשכל. So the first thing is that even what we're talking about here is not intellect. To think, it's only active intellect. It's only because everything inter-includes. So if we're talking about that the person has, let's say in general, three aspects to him. Thought, speech, and action. Okay. So within the thought, there's thought, speech, and action. So there are letters of thought, as we call it, like the actual intellect in the thought. Then there's the ability, the speaking of the thought would be the ability to express it in some way. And then the action in the thought would be like what we're talking about here. That there's an active element in it. It also translates into something active. So and that's the first thing. What we're talking about is not actually thinking. The hand is not thinking. At most what it's doing is it's carrying out the active part of the thought that came first. שבשכל, שהוא המדרגה היותר אחרונה שבשכל, and that's the lowest part of the intellect. כבר באריכות בדברו מתחיל ואברהם זקן ריש מ"ז. השני, שהעיקר הוא השכלת השכל והציור שבמחשבתו, והיד רק מביא לידי פועל איך שהשכיל בבחינת עשייה שבשכל. So he says, even what the hand is doing had to be preceded by the mind envisioning what the hand's about to do. There's no way that the hand could know by itself. Meaning still the mind had to, maybe it did it over many, many times, maybe you did it 1,000 times, 2,000 times, whatever it was, but you did it with your mind telling your hand what to do. eventually the circuit became very quick and very easy. Right? And all the hand does is it only brings it to fruition. It only finishes the act. ולפי הציור של מחשבה. כמובן בדומה מתחיל לנ"ל, בדומה מתחיל ביום שמייצר את רמ"ח. השלישי, but the third thing is, מה שהיד מביא לידי פועל, הוא על ידי התלבשות המידות דווקא. In any case, what the hand is doing is what we call enclothement. It's not the actual intellect. It's the intellect enclosing itself within certain attributes. ומכל זה מובן דבגוף אינו מאיר גילוי השכל. And the end result is that the intellect itself, the light of the intellect, is not revealed in the hand. So what does he mean by enclothement? In enclothement, let's give an example from something more modern, so I hope that it's the same thing. If you look at it used to be even look at a PC, now people look at their phones. So the phone has many, many different apps open at the same time. When you bring the app up, it's not like you're saying that now the whole phone has turned into the app. It's not what happened. The phone, all it is, it's still a piece of silicon. It's still plastic and metal. That's all it is. The app is enclosed within it. So let's say like this: can the phone actually think what it's doing?
No.
It doesn't do that. It's the mind of the programmer is now enclosed in a certain way within this type of object. And this object is very good. It's very versatile. It can do many things, but it doesn't have a mind. It's not like it can think to write its own software. That it doesn't do. So you've uploaded it. That's like you've taken the mind of the programmer and everything that he did, that he thought through, and you've enclosed it within this instrument. But the real intellect remains in the mind. It's not in the hand. It's not in any instrument that you could build. Why do I keep losing where I am? This never happened to me before. And it's the one that thinks deeply, meaning the mind itself. That's where the light of the mind resides. And there are different levels and gradations of what it means that there's intellect there, an internal intellect and an external intellect. All these are discussed in other places. There's something very interesting that I hit upon. I don't think it's such a big, secret. But how do you say understand in Yiddish? So understand. That's you understand. Du verstehst. I want to say understand is Verstand. What is that? What is that word? It's a very interesting word. Why is it in English that you say understand? What does that even mean? Understand? You're standing under what? What's it got to do with standing in the first place? So, how do we say understand in Hebrew? Bina. Bina is the object. So, how did Bina become understand? Like, what in the world possessed the people speaking Germanic English languages to say that it has something to do with standing? So it's an amazing thing. We say that Bina is related to space. Ei ze mekom Bina. That's the most famous pasuk that's quoted in terms of understanding, in terms of Bina. So Ei ze mekom Bina. What is the place of understanding? So now you understand why you have to stand when you understand. Because you're standing in a certain spot. And so now you're standing somewhere, and there's an internal and an external standing action that you can do. What does it mean to stand? Sometimes you stand within the circle, and you have nothing to do with the circle, but you're there. Yeah, I'm in this room. I'm standing here, but it doesn't mean that I really belong. Okay? To be internally. To have internal understanding means that you created the space. You're creating space in your mind. That's the image that's always in Torah. Rechovot hanahar, the width.
Everybody was going able to come up.
Of course he
with
did.
that.
No, everybody understands this. Understands. It's amazing. It's across the board. Everybody understands that you have to stand in order to. There's space that you have to inhabit, and you create space in your mind. That's what it's called. So you can be shaykh to the space, or you can be not shaykh. You can be essentially connected or not essentially connected. But in any case, in the body itself, where the understanding is going, where the intellect is going, there's no light of the intellect there. There's no ability to actually think. כמו בלב, רק לפי אופן הולדת המידות לבד. ובידיים רק לפי אופן העשייה. So even in the heart, when we're talking about the understanding of the heart, that there's bina in the heart, what we mean is not that the heart is thinking. We're just saying that the emotions there have been born from, they're the result of the coupling between wisdom and understanding in the mind. The intellect created emotions. Why do we say this? Again, we have to remind everyone that emotions, there are two types. There are the innate emotions, which you're born with, and they're connected to the animal soul, and there are the emotions that are born from the mind, and these are the higher emotions that a person can have, and usually those come from they can at least, come from the divine soul. וברגל רק לפי אופן ההילוך. So all the heart can do is feel emotions. It can't actually think. It can think in emotions, but it can't actually think abstractly or in pictures or things like that. The hand can only do the type of actions that the mind gave it, meaning the type of craftsmanship it begat within the hand. And the foot can play maybe, as you English call it, football. And it'd be very good at it, very adept, but it can't think. שהוא הרע היותר חיצוני באלה מאוד. And this again is the lowest level of thought. It's the action within the thought, and it doesn't come revealed. It is not revealed in the organ itself. ולכן עצם חומר הראש הוא בדקות יותר מחומר הגוף. And because of this we say that the matter out of which the brain is made is much more delicate than the rest of the matter in the body. And so for that you have to have the blood-brain barrier, and you have to have a lot of things protecting the brain because it is much more delicate than everything else. וחומר הגוף בדקות יותר מחומר הרגל. And then as we keep going down, so the body itself is more than the foot. It's more delicate than the foot. The heart, the kidney for sure, the intestines, they have many, many functions that the foot doesn't have. Until we come to the heel, which is the question that we started with. Right? What was the question? Why does a person first put his foot into the hot water instead of putting his head into it? That's the coarsest type of tissue that we have. וכל זה מובן על פי הנ"ל שבכל מקום שהכוחות שהם האור פנימי מהירים בגילוי יותר, שם החומרים בדקות יותר. So we can also do it the opposite and say, wherever we see that there is internal light, אור פנימי, that light that integrates into the organs, so the more internal light is revealed, we know that the more there is delicate tissue there, delicate matter. And so, for instance, in the eye has always been considered to be the second most delicate out of all the organs, after the brain. ויש לומר שבזה יובן מה שכתוב בספר של בינונים פרק מ' וזה לשונו, כי הערה שבו מצומצמת מאוד עד קצה האחרון, ולכן הוא חומרי וגשמי. Okay, so he's explaining this is what it says in the famous chapter 40, where he describes all the different levels to which Torah and mitzvahs can rise, and then he also mentions this idea. והנה מבואר במקום אחר, בבחינת השכל אינו מאיר כל כך בחינת פשיטות עצם הנפש. So now we have another thing. When we're talking about the psyche, or the let's call it the soul, because I don't have a better name right now, the soul in and of itself. Etzem pshitut hanefesh. Pshitut etzem hanefesh. The extension of the soul itself. It doesn't show up so much in the head, in the brain. It doesn't appear more or less in the brain because the brain is of more delicate tissue. דכל עצם בלתי מתחלק, וממילא בכוח השכל שהוא אור פנימי, אורות בכלים, אינו מאיר בחינת עצם הנפש כי אם הערה נעלמת. So now we're getting to what we said about the Alter Rebbe. We said that the Alter Rebbe, every Friday, preparing for Shabbos, he would wash in very hot water, and then the head he would wash in even hotter water. And this goes a little bit against what we said before, that when a person wants to check the heat of the water, he puts his heel in, he doesn't put his head in. So why do you put hotter water on the head rather than the... So he says like this, because the soul itself is undivisible, it's one object, indivisible. It's one object. So it's actually, because there's so much inner light, meaning integrated light, pnimi, revealed in the head, there's very little room to feel or to experience in any way the makif, the encompassing light, let's call it, of the soul itself. Now this is not the encompassing light, the full encompassing light that we were talking about that is equal everywhere. Because that's equal everywhere, there's no difference. What he's saying here is that there's an aspect of the soul that is less pronounced in the head. What does he mean to say? What is he likening this to? We were talking about that there's people who seem to be very simple, but the Baal Shem Tov loved them much more than he loved the Talmidei Chachamim, the scholars. And he said because they reveal the Pshitus Atzmus of Hashem. They reveal the simple being of God. Why is it? Why do they reveal it, not the scholars? Because the scholars, whenever you meet them, what do you meet? You start talking to them. It's full of Torah, full of knowledge, full of thought, full of ideas. They're thinking about everything under the sun. But when you have so many, it's so much chatter going on, let's call it. Not that it's empty. It's not empty chatter. It's all very serious. It's all very good. But what you're blinded by is this inner integrated light. Meaning the revelation of the soul here is the intellect. And that's what you catch. So when you meet somebody who's of very high stature, you are taken in by their personality, by their character, by their knowledge. It's them. You don't see Hashem. Where's Hashem? Hashem is actually much easier to see if you just look at the inanimate parts of the world. This is Hashem. Yeah. Whenever I have to say about a human being, this is part of Hashem, it's much more difficult. Except if he's like a very special person, that as much as there is there, you never see it. Yeah. You never see it. They're so humble that they'll never show you anything. The tzaddikim are like that to a certain degree. They don't show you anything until you start talking to them, maybe. But on the face of it, it looks like it's the simplest person around. And so to reveal the essence, in the same way that the Baal Shem Tov felt that the simple people reveal God's being much more than the scholars, so that's also true about the body. That the mind, meaning, if I now think about where is my soul, where's my life itself? So I think about my head, it's very hard to catch it. Why? Because I'm full of thoughts and everything's going on. There's a lot going on there. But if I look at my heel, right, there's nothing going on. Nothing at all. It's just there. That's me. That's me much more, right, than the brain, than the mind, than the thought. Much more. Again, it's how it's revealed to me. Not emptiness. Yeah, but that's exactly, it's not empty. It has some light. It has some revelation of the soul, but it's minuscule. And it's particularly because of that, because I'm not blinded by the internal integrated light that I can reveal what we call the thing in and of itself of the soul. I see it much more there. If I want to feel myself, it's like what we say, that the brain doesn't have any sensory nerves. It doesn't feel itself. Why doesn't it feel itself? Because it's so full of thoughts. It can never feel itself. But you can very easily feel your heel. You think about it. You just meditate on it. You focus on your heel for a moment. It's there. It's just there. So what is that? That's me. It's the same thing with the story that the Tzemach Tzedek was on the Alter Rebbe, and he said, "Where's Saba? Where's the grandfather?" So he says, "Here's Saba." He says, "No, that's Saba's head, the nose, and the ear." So then the Tzemach Tzedek hit upon it. He said, "Saba, go out." And he said, and then he called him, and when he came in, all of him at the same time said, "This is Saba," and he agreed that this is me. When you look at the brain, it's almost something separate. It's also one of these strange things that leads to mistakes. Let's say we look at the Jewish people. So again, someone says, it's the scholars that really make up the Jewish people. The Baal Shem Tov said, no, that's like saying that the brain is the person. It's not. It's the part that blinds you with all its wisdom. Yeah, very nice. But it's not the person himself. You want to talk about the person himself, the whole person. You can't look at where all the action is happening. You have to see the totality. Because of that, we have these concepts that there's shleimut ha'am, shleimut ha'aretz, shleimut ha'torah, the wholeness of something. And if anything is missing, it's not that thing anymore. So this is a very important concept and well known, but to say it. Okay, so let's continue tomorrow.
So there was a couple who had a baby.
Yeah.
And the baby couldn't stop crying. There was nothing they could do. It just cried day and night and day. The mother was going crazy. Mama was going crazy. And the baby was a month, 2 months, 3 months. He wouldn't stop crying. He was lying on the floor crying. And in desperation, the mother threw a piece of paper and a pen. And he picked up the pen and he started to do kishkushai, and the paper was 3 months old. By the time this baby was a year old, he could already write Aleph Bet. Didn't know what it was, but he could write it. And in the end, he turned out to be a very famous sofer. His hand already knew what he wanted the brain to tell it to do. Golden hands. Take it or leave it.